Hello, everybody. Lovely to see you all, and we will make a start because we've got a lot to get through. It's going to be a really exciting hour to talk about all things AI, ethics, and even more. So it's my great pleasure to welcome you here today by this event run by the Centre for AI and Digital Ethics. And also my great delight to introduce somebody who's been a great friend of the Centre for AI and Digital Ethics since our inception in 2020. And we had hoped to meet a few years earlier than 2025, but as you all know, there was a few things that happened in between. So this seminar is with Christoph Lütge, and he is the director of the Technical University of Munich Institute for Ethics in AI. So kind of a sister institute, I'd like to think, to CAIDE. And he's going to speak about the topic of ethics and governance of AI and LLMs, current challenges and opportunities, which is on all of our minds. So before I introduce Christoph, I would just like to acknowledge that we're on the lands of the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I'd like to pay my respects to their elders past and present, and also to any Indigenous or First Nations peoples who are here today. And I'd also like to acknowledge that this site is quite significant for both Melbourneians and First Nations people. We're on the site of what used to be the Royal Women's Hospital. Many people in this building will have been born here, or their parents will have been born here. And if you look out the window, you can see there is a round hole in the middle of the courtyard, which is called the oculus, and that symbolises the birthing history of this building. It's a place of great joy. It was a birthing site for Indigenous people too. So it's a place of long-standing significance, a place of joy, but also some sorrow, because I will just remind people this was a place where Indigenous babies were taken from their parents without consent or permission and part of the stolen generation. So it's also important that we reflect on that history while we're here today. But having said that, we are going to go on and talk about AI ethics and responsible AI with our wonderful guest speaker. So Christoph Lütge is a professor of business ethics at the Technical University of Munich, as I mentioned, director of the Institute for Ethics and Artificial Intelligence, as I mentioned, but there's more. He is also a distinguished visiting professor at the University of Tokyo and has held visiting positions at Harvard, Stockholm, Taipei was the word I was trying to get out there, Taipei, and Kyoto, and very beautiful parts of the world that has visited. He's a background in both philosophy and business informatics, ideally placed to talk about this topic. In 2007, he was awarded a Heisenberg Fellowship by the German Research Foundation. Congratulations. His most recent books, and there's a number of them: Business Ethics and Digitization, 2022, Evolving Business Ethics, 2022, Introduction to Ethics in Robotics and AI, 2021. We love that topic. Business Ethics, Economically Informed Perspective, Oxford University Press, 2021. And as you've guessed, his areas of studies are the ethics of artificial intelligence, digitization, digital ethics, business ethics, corporate social responsibility, foundations of ethics, philosophy of economics. Wow, what a great CV. So we're delighted to introduce you at last to Melbourne. Take it away.
Thank you so much, Jeannie, for this warm introduction, and I'm very happy to be here finally. As you said, after many years of knowing each other virtually, I think as a start, I would like to say something about this institute. The TUM Institute for Ethics in AI was founded in 2019, and now there are a few other institutions around that in the world, of course, like this one, like our sister institution here. And what we do and what we might do in a most peculiar way is that we are always working together with the people from technology. So in all our research projects, we have people from the technological side and the non-technology side. So people from computer science, engineering, medicine, working together with people from governance, law, ethics, or psychology maybe, and others. We have these research clusters. You will find more of these on our website, of course, and you will find the individual projects under each cluster, like AI for mobility, which is, for example, about ethics in autonomous driving. Or there's a lot of this in medicine and healthcare, obviously, generative AI, which is something that I will also go into today, as well as very interesting developments in the field of AI in education and about the ethical and governance aspects of that. We regularly publish research reports. Again, these can be found on our website, as well as the networks that we have established. And I would like mainly to mention the Global AI Ethics Consortium, which we founded early in 2020, just when the lockdown started. And we thought we should get together. We should not let the communication stop. And it's good now to get back in person together. Also, if you're interested, we publish regularly research briefs. We have just one out last week about all sorts of different topics in AI ethics, and we held public events a lot, and especially one which I would like to invite you to, that is the Responsible AI Forum, our kind of flagship event, which we held once for the first time virtually in 21. I think you might have been there virtually, right? And then 23, which was in person, and the next installment will be in May 26th. The call for papers has just been opened. So let me start with some fundamentals of AI ethics. And one starting point I find always quite interesting is the G7 summit in Hiroshima 2023, because when world leaders get together, there are a lot of topics that need to be discussed. But here the topic of trustworthy AI was very high on the agenda. And when does that happen to an ethics topic at all? And it was interesting to see why they said, well, our path to a vision of trustworthy AI may vary. We still have this common vision and vision about human rights issues and a lot of others. Of course, 23 is already 2 years behind us, and things have happened since then. But I would say still this is something not to be underestimated. Let me also start with what's the name actually of this field. So there was already the question, what should our institute be named? Ethics in AI? Is it ethics of AI? Is it AI ethics? So I've mentioned a few other institutions. There's an Institute for Ethics in AI at Oxford, this with the same name, and which was actually founded after ours. I insist on a few months after ours. Beautiful building they have now. I was there in March, so they have just moved in this very new one. And there are others around the world. Of course, yours I've listed too. But why ethics in AI? So our idea when the center was or institute was founded was that we should not just bring ethics to the technology. Like there's a technology which is unethical and we bring ethics to it. So now the idea was that there is also something ethical in it. There might maybe lessons, ethical lessons from the technology itself. And as I believe, and I will talk about that in a minute, also benefits, ethical benefits that this technology brings or can bring about. And if that's not enough, I just want to share with you one observation which I had at the World Congress of Philosophy last year in Rome. There was for the first time a section ethics of AI, and I had the pleasure to chair it, and we had 40 papers in 5 different languages, conceptual issues, applied issues, and many ethical issues of AI. there was a lot of interest in that. And I would just like to say, this is David Chalmers, by the way, and maybe some of you know him, talking about large language models at the World Congress of Philosophy. And so this has really become into the heart of philosophy, and there's suddenly a lot of interest there, but not just in philosophy, but also in the tech field, as well as coming from the companies. And this is, I think, where it's a bit different from say other developments in medical ethics or bioethics of the past decades. Usually there the interest came mostly from some non-technological or non-industry field, but here it's different. We get approached by companies, we get approached by all sorts of organizations who find that what we are doing, what we are developing in the field of AI, for example, is not just about technology. The problems that we have to solve are not just purely technological ones, but also ethical ones. And I find that's quite interesting. Also, but I will just very briefly, because for reasons of time, it would be interesting to trace back the field of AI ethics to the philosophy of technology and to Heidegger. Are there any Heidegger specialists here? No, that's. I will. That's one. I will just briefly mention that, and I will skip this. But it's interesting to see that, as I believe, Heidegger's critique of technology, it does not necessarily apply to AI. If you want to know more about that, then you can read the longer version of the PowerPoint. Why I think AI is really different from other technologies in that it may be able to create meaning. And Heidegger believed that the technology that he thought of his time, like power plants, he had this example, did reduce the nature to something very, well, just a resource and something you can just use. But I think this is different from AI because it can detect meaning in data. It can find meaning and I would even say create meaning that not necessarily was there before or not seen. So that's why I believe what we need to do as AI in AI ethics is to create trustworthy. So we have this goal of trustworthy AI. I believe that in order to, and companies are recognizing this, in order for their systems to be used and for users to trust in them, we will need to install rights, values, standards, and maybe regulation to it to ensure that they are both technically robust and also ethically trustworthy. And there we have some examples. In the last few years, the ethics of AI discussion has, I would say, gone through several different stages. One was the catalogs of core principles that were developed. Like this one was in 2018. It was done by the AI for People, a group working for the European Parliament, and where I was also a part of, as well as others like the high-level expert group in Europe and others. And we came up with these 5 ethics principles for AI, and 4 of them are taken from other fields of applied ethics. The first 4, like promoting well-being, preserving dignity and sustainability, not doing harm, and ensuring privacy and security, and maybe also think about what are kind of capabilities, some things that we don't want to hand over to AI. Autonomy or decision-making power that we should retain for ourselves and others, which we delegate to AI. Justice is, of course, about sharing the benefits of AI, which means that making sure that there's not just a single group or small group that benefits from it, but all the people. And of course, the fifth principle, explicability or explainability, is sometimes called. This is new to AI ethics, and it's about basically making something explainable, which is in itself very hard to explain. But this is, of course, a research field in computer science as well. And a lot of interesting things happening there. As I said, this was the kind of first stage of the AI ethics, which then went later on into different other stages. Like then we saw, after these very general catalogs of principles, we saw more specific ones for specific fields and specific application areas of AI. So this would be the ethical pillar of trustworthy AI. Then we have the robustness pillar, which is more technical, and I will not go into detail here. Because the technology people will say this is the most important one. And usually there's a lot of money that's going into that, which is fine. I'm okay with that. But I think we should also talk about the other ones. So there's now, and in the last few years, becoming more and more important, the law area, lawful, trustworthy AI, if you want, which is, and of course, I will go more into detail here, but there's not just laws, but there are, of course, human rights treaties, conventions, and individual member states this is from the European Union, of course, but it would apply to others. By the way, if you want to know more about this, it has just last year come out, the ELGA Companion to Applied AI Ethics, which we edited. And this is, there's a lot of interesting articles in it about both AI governance, AI regulation, and case studies on different areas like finance and education and autonomous driving. So just briefly mentioning this if you're interested to know more about it. Okay, so let's go to some of the specific areas. Autonomous vehicles. And as I said before, I think it's important to look not just at the ethical challenges. There are, of course, a lot of ethical challenges of AI, but might there be also benefits? And so I was a part of this first ethics committee for autonomous driving in 2017, so a long time ago already, in Germany, which was working for the German Ministry of Transport. And we said that we should not forget that there is a lot of ethical benefits to be had by the technology if we manage to avoid all these, or a lot of a substantial part of the accidents and fatalities, since we know that more than 90% of car accidents are caused chiefly by human error. So not just that, but also reducing physical and mental stress. And now what's becoming more and more important, recently there's been much more talk about mobility for handicapped people. This is something which this was already talked about in 2017-18, but it was not taken seriously so much actually for a long time. I said, it will be a long time, like 20 years maybe. But now with robotaxis coming to, and are already in a number of cities in the US. I'm not sure about Australia coming, or so, because Munich now will get some next year. So next year we will have both Uber as well as a Chinese company putting robotaxis on the streets. Let's see. And this is something, yeah, also quite exciting, I think.
We call it mining, autonomous vehicles in mining.
Yeah.
It's flat and straight.
And usually it's probably in a controlled environment, I guess. That's the point. There's
more dangerous for people as well.
Yeah, we have had shuttles in like mostly controlled environments for a while, and for a while it seemed like, well, this will be the standard for the next 10 years or so. But suddenly we had the International Automobile Fair just a few weeks ago in Munich, and then suddenly it was announced we'll get the robotaxi. So there has been a huge development there in this field. But also, these are fields that are, at least in Germany, completely underestimated. Efficient food production, so AI for increasing agricultural productivity. Like, these things taken individually seem very simple, analyzing weather conditions, temperature, water usage, soil conditions, like precision agriculture to aid in detecting diseases in plants, poor nutrition, and so on. But taken together, and these data are being collected together and then being used, is quite valuable. And it's already used in a lot of places. I have looked at this in India, for example, but also others, and this can greatly help. Also, biodiversity, AI to help protect biodiversity. A camera trap is not something very sophisticated, but the data collected from many of these and being processed and not just stored, but also analyzed in real time can help greatly to aggregate and to learn about what is the current status of certain species around the globe or in certain areas. And about generative AI, I have this example. Of course, we could have many others. What we have been looking into is these generative AIs that are used for training, especially in the medical field, and creating simulations of various health conditions in the education of future doctors, for example. And this is something that is something that I would say rather new. I mean, compared to what was possible before Gen AI. This is an example from Michigan, but I think there probably are many more ones. It also seems very simple to improve documentation efforts, leverage data to create patient education videos and these things like that, summaries, ensuring patient understanding. Well, answering medical questions by these systems. This is something. It also seems like simple at first, but a lot can be done with it, and they are much better than they used to be. Of course, people have been using the internet to ask about AI, about medical, all sorts of medical issues for a long time, certainly more than 25 years. But now it's getting much better, actually, and also in assisting, of course, in clinical diagnosis. This has been around for many years now, better than any doctor, tailoring risk considerations based on the medical history, facilitating continuity of care, and just extracting data from medical records, transcribing them, and helping doctors. So I was just last year, I was invited to 3 different medical conferences to talk about ethics of AI in the medical sector. And I thought this was about very complicated things, maybe robots for surgery and very high-tech things. But no, they wanted to talk about ChatGPT and how they can use ChatGPT for their daily practice and what ethical questions might come up with that. So this is what actually this is like a good selling point for AI. Yeah, so there's a lot of interest in that. So this is, of course, just one example. Now we have risks, of course, too. And of course, I can just mention these few of these privacy issues. In Gen AI, often the question is, what data are you using to train those algorithms? Is there any transparency about what data is being used? And in many cases, there is no transparency or almost none, as we all know. Now, what I see, what interesting to see is that there are these different plans. Now, probably you have seen as well, when you look into the different ChatGPT plans that you can purchase, there are some where you can just make sure that your data are not being used to train the general model. And I think this is probably a direction that more will go into, that you may use the technology without having the risk that it's going somewhere where you don't want it to be, since as I saying, well, we can trace it back, but often you find, as we know of these cases, you find some of the content that you have been putting into it, or you find it somewhere. So anyway, reliability, of course, this is a very big issue, producing inaccurate or fabricated responses, hallucinations. I've just read that apparently the latest models are getting better at that. I haven't had the time to check myself yet, but it seems that it's apparently getting better. I would think that this is a problem that will persist. Maybe it's getting better, but I mean, you can't take it for face value, so you still need to double check with these results that you get. The case that I've just read, it was about AI checking your references, apparently, and so far it's been the other way around. You have to check the reference that the system gives you. Apparently, it's getting better at checking these. But okay, I don't know exactly. And of course, the biases that we have in other areas of AI to perpetuating or possibly perpetuating unfairness and inequity, and so on. In different job sectors, different questions are, of course, coming up, and medicine and law are certainly, so law is a very big field in Germany too now, that you're asking these these questions to your system, and
400 cases worldwide now of lawyers who found to have used AI and have hallucinated and presented hallucinated content to courts.
Oh.
It's massive, honestly.
Okay, wow. Oh. Great.
This is 400 cases that have gone before the court for identifying. So not just, yeah.
Okay, great. Unfortunately, I don't know about Germany or what the exact numbers
that's
there, but
worldwide.
that's all right.
Worldwide, there's somebody who collects them.
Wow.
Yeah. So, and there's probably more, but it's just that those are the ones that have been hit by courts where their courts have identified. So, sorry.
Yeah, sure. No, but that's very important to know. And responses favoring certain populations, of course, disproportionately harming minorities. Again, yeah, this needs to be mitigated in some ways, and also the issues in education. So there's a lot of talk about degradation of writing and critical thinking skills. I'm not a fan of like saying it's all getting worse and worse, and yeah, I wouldn't say that. But it's certainly something to pay attention to. What are we teaching? What are we teaching at school already? Of course, I have two kids, both out of school now, but at university. But I mean, critical thinking skills. I think this is something that we should, yeah, teach, and which is something that ChatGPT, I don't know, maybe it has some potential to teach it, but I think there's more to it, and like also questioning what you get as results, and staying critical overall. So a number of issues to think about. Of course, in other areas there are other types of risks. So just briefly, we'll not go into the details here. In autonomous vehicles, who is responsible if there's a crash? This is the famous Uber crash from 2018, of course, where there was the car detected the person with the bike on the road, but did not brake for a number of reasons. It's a long story, but this is something that should be talked about, and others. This is something that we have been doing a lot of work at my institute. This is a kind of not an extreme case, but an everyday case. What constitutes a fair distribution of risks in road traffic? So how close should a car be allowed to get to a truck or a bike, and others? And these are things that are not exactly stated in the law. This is something that might be might be kind of negotiated or looked at from an ethical point of view. And what we did is also look at it from different ethical theories, and do they make a difference? So they do, but yeah, this is again, as long as it's been published in a few articles that we did. What I find very interesting is not just the cases where you say, well, there's a risk, there's an ethical risk to it, but then there might be different sides of the ethics story, conflicts within ethics itself. I mean, this is a good example, but maybe for reasons of time, I will just use this one because it's simpler. The care robots. So do care robots endanger or preserve human dignity? And this is an old discussion, I would say, still, but a lot of people say, well, shouldn't we rather have a human care personnel than robots? But on the other hand, we have a number of studies that show that actually for certain tasks, elderly people would rather like to have robots doing this or performing these tasks for them. So they and for others, they would like to have human personnel rather, and maybe have more time to talk to human healthcare workers. So this is question. There might be. It's not so simple as saying, well, the ethics tells you this or that. There might be different standpoints, or yeah. Let me just brief the internet bots. Should chatbots be required to reveal themselves as bots? But then there might be, people might trust them less. Who owns information or data shared with the chatbot? This is something I brought up already. And similarly, an autopilot, car on autopilot, should it be indicated to the people outside that the car is in autopilot mode? Or would then people rather step in front of it deliberately to trigger response? This is some what people say. So would the disclosure make people feel safer or rather not? And I always like to ask the question is, what about if you're on a flight and the plane can take off on its own, it can fly on its own, can land on its own? Do you know when the pilots are in control? And would you want to know? So we don't know normally, so we have the pilots there mostly for trust. So for people to sit in the plane and trust in case that something goes wrong. But even then, actually, studies have shown that if you look at the plane crashes of the past decades, usually it went wrong because some human being did something wrong. There are exceptions to that, but there are more cases that the human is a risk factor rather than an asset. But so whatever. So there might be different sides to that story. So that's usually we don't indicate to the outside whether a car is in autopilot mode. And with Gen AI, there's just to briefly mention this first point. What about the effect on the workplace and the job markets? That's something we now see. Sorry, there's something we now see in full force, like this year in particular. There's so the job loss and which is really due now to Gen AI taking over certain tasks, especially like lower level, not low level, but lower level tasks. Jobs for beginners. There's a lot that's going away, unfortunately, and I think there's no clear answer yet to that. Well, it's no use saying, well, we shouldn't use generative AI. That is not the way, but we need to somehow find ways of creating new roles while displacing others, making reskilling, upskilling increasingly necessary. Yes, I meant this. There's a disproportionate impact on beginners. There's kind of polarization of jobs, and also, yeah, the definite need for reskilling and workforce adaptation. And I get to the last part of my talk, which is about the governance aspects. I said before, there's this law pillar, and I will talk about this a bit more. Yeah, for people I've mentioned already. So we have existing regulations, of course, so before the current wave of regulation initiatives. We've had the GDPR for privacy rights. We had the European Convention on Human Rights, others too, liability directives, and so on, so which also have an impact on AI, and actually might or do even conflict with the current regulations that are specifically put up for AI, such as the new AI Act. So there's they are not in harmony. Let's say this is just one aspect, but this has not been cleared up so far, and wonder if it will be at all. So the AI Act, I will go into a bit more. So this was the journey to the AI Act. There was the proposal published by the Commission in 21, which was before Gen AI, by the way, as you of course know. And then there was a consultation period. We also gave some input to it. Not sure it was taken seriously. And then there was something with the parliament and the complicated process that went into the AI Act coming into force last year. It defines certain layers of risk from minimal to limited, high risk, and unacceptable risk. But this category would just include, let's say, social scoring systems like in China, and facial recognition in some cases, although this is far from clear what it really extends to. So you know very much more about it in some areas, but even that is under discussion. What was important in particular was these conformity assessments that are required for the high risk level, which extends to a lot of systems, especially in law enforcement, immigration systems, and also, for example, in the educational sector. There's been a lot of criticism to that. Maybe this is a bit too strict and doesn't allow for enough development and so on. So what it requires for these high risk systems are, for example, a risk management system, data governance, technical documentation, like with a machine or with any other machine, well, transparency, of course, and human oversight, which is an important factor. In many instances, actually, it's not yet clear what it means. So they are saying it has to be developed, what it means, and it might mean different things for different systems. Yeah. So, and as I said, generative AI, it came later on, and it was added to the AI Act, which I'm not sure is a really good idea, because so they added this as these general purpose AI systems and well, foundation models, and basically this applies then to any AI system that is being trained, and because the AI Act or the people behind it say, well, it is not for the development stage. It's for the, if you put it on the market, then you need it. But of course, you can't do that. So like you have to keep the records and all the data from the development stage and already pay attention to that there, because otherwise you don't have it later on when you need to, when you want to put it in the market and you need to have all these data. So they cannot be separated. So yeah, there's some more detail to that, but won't go into all the decisions. There has been, and I will mention 3 critiques of the AI Act that we have had, at least 3. I think maybe the first one, which isn't even there, is that, and I've been talking to people, to colleagues from the field of law, and they're saying, but they haven't seen anything like that, with so many very, very broad categories and concepts being used, and nobody really knows how to interpret them. And so courts would take many, many years to interpret them, and until then you create a lot of uncertainty, which is what they didn't want to do. They wanted to create more certainty, which they not really achieved. But beyond that, it's being said that the AI Act might impede the EU's competitiveness and innovation capability. Well, one problem is that it's very, very broad in its scope. So it tries to regulate across all sorts of AI systems. It might have been better to go for specific regulations for specific fields, like, for example, autonomous driving. In Germany, we've had the Autonomous Driving Act since 21, which is just for this specific field, and maybe a better way. So this broad, at least it's very challenging. Probably. Then the second critique is that what about SMEs? And I think this is maybe the most critical one, since we have a lot of SMEs in particular in Germany, and startups in Munich in particular, coming out of my university too, and they do not have the same means and capacities for dealing with all the compliance which Silicon Valley companies can easily do. I mean, they have their huge compliance departments, and it will be easy for them to tick some additional boxes, basically. So if your intention with the AI Act was to rein in the Silicon Valley companies, it might achieve the opposite. So it might eventually end up with, and we just had an instance in the education sector when educational software was being developed, an AI system was being developed, and there's from a huge amount of money. I don't remember the exact one, but it was a lot. And so finally they said, well, we are going to abandon it. We cannot do it. We will buy something from Microsoft. And so, yeah, whatever. So this might run counter to your intention. And the third one is that, do we really know enough about particular generative AI? I think I'm definitely not against regulation, but the question is, what's the most efficient regulation? What is the one that really achieves what was the original intention? And, with other technologies, we've had much more time, and we need to know what would be efficient. So maybe this was not the best way to do it. And if you look at the global perspective, you see that a lot of other countries and areas of the world are going much more for softer AI governance rules, as well as being more pro-innovation. Japan has explicitly stated that last year in particular. India has said the same. So US, there has been an executive orders both by Biden and by Trump. And while there are some differences between them, but the general direction is quite similar, actually. Prioritizing innovation, and I think that makes innovation. We should prioritize innovation, certainly, but having ethics and governance worked pro-innovation, I mean, that would be a good thing. I was in Colombia last year, where they also signed a declaration about AI governance, again prioritizing innovation, leaning clearly towards non-binding rules. So all these are saying, well, we are really in favor of AI trustworthiness and all that, but we're going not for legally binding rules. And I only knew of two exceptions. Basically, the one was Brazil, and Brazil, I think, has I don't know more about it recently, but I haven't seen anything new coming out of that. There has been an initiative, and the Canadian one has been abandoned.
Vietnam.
Oh, Vietnam. Oh, okay. I mean, we have China, of course, but I don't know if that's a good example, because it's only directed towards the private sector and not the public one. So I think the public sector, which I haven't been talking about much today, was also very important. So this Canada Act has been abandoned this January, rather quietly, I would say. So let me end with this. What I would like to have seen, but maybe it is too late for that, is a kind of middle way for the governance of AI. And we published a paper from the AI for People about that in 2019, to go for not just a top-down approach, which we now kind of seen of legal regulation, also not just for a regulation from the bottom, but a kind of middle middle out approach that incorporates different elements. For example, companies, organizations suggesting some elements of legislation and they are being reviewed, or others, NGOs suggesting that and being reviewed. If you look into the paper, you will find more about this. So that was our idea initially. I think that would have made more sense as we're currently seeing. But it has been announced that there will be revisions to the AI Act this year even. And I'm not sure if you've seen that the person who drafted most of it, Gabriele Mazzini, has just, I think 2 weeks ago, said in an interview, it's the opposite of what I wanted. So the result, the AI Act, is the opposite of what I wanted. We have created a monster, he said. Okay, thank you very much. Thank you.